So, hello there once again. We are live, so to say, but we're actually not live. We are recording this episode today, and it's me, Stellan, and it's you,
Jillian. So, welcome back. We have a mom guest today, and we're going to be covering an extensive theme, which is colics in babies. So I know how stressful it can be to have a colicky baby when you first realize you have one, and then it becomes dealing with exhaustion and stress and bonding with your baby. So Anastasia is going to tell us a little bit more. How is she dealing with this stage?
Hello, Anastasia. Welcome
Hi, both. Happy to be here.
To my Swedish baby. So, tell us, what's your story?
Yes. So, as probably many moms or no moms go into the motherhood thinking they will have a very challenging baby. That was my case. I had a fairly healthy pregnancy, very healthy delivery. And once I got home with this newborn and his zombie mode, let's say, wore off, I just faced myself with a very a screaming baby at almost all parts of the day and night. And of course, certain expectation of constantly crying baby was there. So I was like, all right, probably just a crying baby. 1 day, 2 day, 1 week, 2 weeks. But it was to the point of then us not sleeping more than an hour or 2 hours ever. So after a week or two, you go into almost that, exhaustion mode that no words can relate. And all you keep hearing is, well, all babies cry. So at our first PVC appointment, when I tried to get a little bit more understanding of maybe what we're doing wrong, all I heard was, all babies cry. And you expect that and you think, okay, maybe that will pass. Maybe it is just, a very cry baby. And so the next PVC appointment is usually, a week or two apart. Our baby was gaining normal weight, but then there's this still question after a whole month of not sleeping. What is going on? Surely not everyone is going through this. And, once I've checked in with a couple of my mommy friends, the common language around this, yes, we're up, quote unquote, all night, breastfeeding or cluster feeding. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm also up all night, so everyone must be going through this. But then it just at some point after that, if not getting any single REM sleep cycle for a month, you start to just go to a very dark place and questioning a lot of the things. Because in our case, we had a colicky baby and a very strong acid reflux baby. So every time I fed him, it would unleash this reaction in his gut and stomach of discomfort. So it would take me up to hour and a half to calm him down, to then put him to sleep. And, if you do the calculation, you breastfeed, then you take an hour and a half to calm the baby, pretty much puts you to that, almost third hour, like if you feed every 3 hours to start the cycle all over again. And that was my life for about a month until I almost lost any shred of sanity. And started really questioning, surely this is not normal. Surely this is not a normal crying baby. Surely not everyone is going through this, because, how would the planet be so overpopulated if all babies were this challenging? How would anyone want a second baby if all baby experiences were like this? And how is everyone, quote unquote, all up all night like me, but then are having really positive days or experiences with their babies? So that was kind of in a nutshell our first tumble into the newborn phase. At that point, I just really started to go down any resources possible and available. What I think was helpful to us is we decided to switch our nurses at the BBC, because what I found out, that particular nurse was just, and I think that's been talked about on this podcast, was just meant for a baby who is, good in health, let's say average on all other fronts. And so what I've described, because there's such variability in babies, what I described could be normal or it could not be, but that's where it was left. Let's see, it could just be normal. It could just be that baby. You may have just gotten a cry baby, but no other efforts are made to question a little bit further, to examine it a little bit further. So I, by pure luck almost, got another very lovely BVC nurse in the same practice. And she took the time to actually listen and try to go down further details about how we were. And by that point, we also were scheduled for the usual checkup with the pediatrician. And so that's where she caught our acid reflux issues with the baby. And I think after even that first appointment where some things and some symptoms were put towards, or there were certain things allocated towards, or symptoms or issues, that gave me a little bit of power and strength and also agency to start creating solutions on my front, because you don't know what you don't know, and you can't question what you don't have the knowledge to question. So as soon as I heard acid reflux.
What was the reaction from the nurse that you left, so to say? Was there an animosity there? Did she react in some way? Because I understood it was at the same BVC, but another nurse.
Of course, it was a new BVC of 2 years old, but very well reviewed. But it had two nurses, so that was an added awkwardness of, okay, we either completely leave the BVC or we switch to the only other one in it, and of course the other one will know. Thankfully, the initial nurse went on vacation, and she's like, well, let me just schedule you with my colleague. And I was like, oh, okay. And then once we met the colleague, she was a world of difference to us. So then I kind of just was like, well, Marcel, our son, seems to love you. Can we just stay with you? He responds well to you. So I tried to avoid that awkwardness because I hate confrontations as well. So it was a stroke of luck.
Did you get any specific remedies that you found really helpful?
So yes. So once specific to acid reflux, once we knew it was acid reflux, the main thing to do is to elevate everything. So try to elevate the changing pad where you change your baby, because he screamed whenever we put him down for changes. But now it made sense because it meant that the reflux was coming up to his esophagus and burning him. So we elevated just about every surface where we would normally lay him down completely flat. So including his crib, including the changing table, even the baby gym, we had something elevated. And there are products that you could buy for acid reflux baby, but we actually had a DIY solution for many of these. You can roll up a towel. You could, we had actually old memory foam pillow that we kind of cut at an angle to make a triangle slope. So a lot of DIY solutions around the household that made quite a lot of difference almost right away in that sense. You also, knowing that also helps you arrange for the wake windows. So the usual routine or the usual standard that they say is, wake, nurse, play, sleep. And we couldn't do that especially because if I were to nurse him immediately after wake him, it meant that either I would have to then hold him completely vertically for half an hour, and not being able to do tummy time or any other developmental things that you're meant to do with your baby while they're awake for those short wake windows at the beginning. So that was also a very practical thing that may not be mentioned readily, because when you look up as a new mom what to do with your baby during the wake window or what the routine should be, the standard is, wake, nurse, play. So I had to rearrange a couple of those things, which again made quite a bit of difference. And then also just being more soothed as a mother, knowing that you're doing something, because the first month felt completely like I was completely helpless. We tried to do things, but we weren't, it's like shooting in the dark.
I wanted to get to this. I want to get to this that you're talking about now, because when you're coping with this stress and exhaustion that you're going through, somehow it starts affecting the bonding with the baby. So what are you doing for yourself? What did you do? Is this happening still? Is the baby still colicky? What stage are you in now?
So my baby's now 9 months. The colicky stage probably lasted around, I would say 2 to 3 months for us. And the first two, of course, I almost, I didn't go out. I wasn't, I couldn't go out with him because he was crying all the time. I couldn't do much. And then I just recall 2 specific instances. One where I was meeting a friend for the first time, and she was not a mommy friend. So she was excited to see the baby, and Marcel was sleeping at the time. And we met outside because I was, walking to make sure he's soothed and sleeping. And she just was very excited. So she lit up and she went immediately toward the baby, like, oh, look at him. He's gorgeous. And my thing was like, what are you doing? You're going to wake him up. He's going to scream. Like, there was just that internal,
Typical.
like, oh, like, how can you find him? Almost thinking, how can you find him cute, or how can you be so happy? Because to me, it was a constant terror. I was constantly afraid he would open his eyes. At that time, I genuinely had maybe 2 seconds between him sleeping and I see the flutter in his eyes, and I knew, like, as soon as they were open, it was scream. It was not a little scream. It was not a whine. It was a full-on scream. And you have no time to react. If you're somewhere, in the toilet midway peeing, you just have to drop what you're doing, and you have to go to him, because it just escalates. And so that was the first instance that I was like, that's almost a weird reaction. You have an out-of-body experience, because I had such a disconnect between her reaction and my reaction. And then I just realized, that was, I think, the first time I realized I'm petrified of my own baby. Up to that point.
How, I mean, when your baby is screaming so much, did it tire the baby? How was it with sleeping periods, or was that also exhausting for the baby?
Yeah, I think so. I think at some point, that's why I was starting to get worried, because he was not getting those full, probably REM cycles either, right? He was sleeping very little as us. And at some point, I was starting to get worried that it would affect him developmentally, because at some point you need that full-on long stretch to.
Did he physically? Was that also that development hindered by this also?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Physically, did your baby develop according to the normal curve, or
was the baby in the curve losing weight or growing?
Yes, so that I think was another challenging part in communicating with the BVC, because sometimes, because he was growing nicely, and surprisingly, he was according to his curve just on that average line, gaining weight, gaining length, nursing, but it was just that disconnect about what was happening in his tummy, the bloatiness, and how to help, because again, on the charts and according to the numbers, he was well. And then you're kind of against those numbers. You're kind of arguing, you're making a case that your baby's not well, but on the charts, on his baby chart, he's doing really well. So I think that was also difficulty in my postpartum experience as well.
But going back to when you were talking about the developmental milestones, because I know you need some of the good C's. The baby needs to go through these sleeping cycles to be able to hit these developmental milestones in time. Did you see that affected the baby in this way particularly?
So thankfully, like I said, I think the colicky stage stopped after like 2 to 3 months. But at every wake window, I think it was almost like as much as we could, it was like a military school in our household. We tried, we read up on everything, and that's another frustrating thing. We were ready.
If you want to sum up now, what are the best advices that you could give to someone in the same situation?
So if you have acid reflux, baby, I think I've talked about some practical solutions that you can implement immediately. With the overall colicky stage, you can't do too much necessarily. So I think it's all about support system. And as an expat, I know it's very limited. So you can't necessarily have your family over, but if you can, try to have someone fly over or drive over to you to help out with other aspects. You may have to still feed and you may still have very little sleep, but what about food? What about diaper changes? What about all the other aspects around you that they may be able to help with? So my mom was doing a lot of cooking, a lot of homemade cooking. So at least I found comfort in that. At 4 a.m. in the morning, I would be in the fridge eating some of my mom's homemade cooking. So the support system also of moms who may be going through the similar experience or have gone through, and that's all of the support groups. It could be in your own language. It doesn't have to be just the Sweden baby group, although that is a very wonderful community. So I think with that, internet is your friend in the sense of finding those groups and surrounding yourself with the community.
Thank you so much, Anastasia. That was wonderful input. And I think we know now a lot more about colicky babies, thanks to you. So I'm hoping that all the moms out there are going to benefit from what you just told us and your experience and what you went through. So thank you again. Thank you, Stellan. And we'll see you in another video episode of My Swedish Baby.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.